Hello and welcome. It's Monday. I think it's the 28th. No, it's not. It's the 21st of March, 2022. My name's Steve Pugh, and what I do is something called a growth strategy podcast where I talk to interesting people that really kind of talk about their business and career and what they've been up to and their story and their journey and that kind of thing. And for me, it's really important to almost hear from people that I class as real, genuine people that hopefully you can kind of relate to, because it's always great to hear from people on TV and the celebrities and all that kind of thing. But actually, that doesn't really benefit or impact 99% of people who, we're not billionaires, we're not in the stock market, whatever. And that's where I like to basically dig out and find and talk to interesting people. So Josh, I'm going to introduce you today, CEO and founder of different companies, which you're going to go into, and he's going to explain it. But if you kind of join us for the next 30, 40 minutes, hopefully it's of interest. And then if you drop any questions in the chat, they should pop up on my screen as well. So I'll happily bring them in. So Josh, there we go. You're now live.
Hello.
Perfect. Would you be happy to give a quick kind of 30-second intro just to kind of who you are, where you're from? I think I'll just kind of set the scene quite well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you start off by kind of saying that you're interviewing interesting people, and yet you're interviewing me, so I'm not quite sure how that happened. But yeah, no, I'm Josh. I'm the CEO, founder of Everflow, and I'm also a proud father. So you'll probably see me occasionally post on LinkedIn about my beautiful daughter Jemima, who I'm very proud of. She's about 4 months old now. So kind of that's a bit about me.
No, that's cool. And likewise, and by the way, engineers are interesting. I'm just going to throw that out there. I asked you just before we came on the call, looks like you're in a hotel room because you're down in London.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So tonight is the very delayed Utility Week Awards. It was supposed to be kind of last October time, I think, and but because of COVID, it was pushed back. So it's quite exciting because it's the kind of first awards event I've been to since COVID was a thing, or at least in person anyway. And we're up for the Disruptor Awards in those award ceremonies, so very excited. Oh, and I'm probably in kind of usual disruptor fashion. I am. The event is black tie. However, I am turning up in my my bright pink hoodie, and I'll see what the reaction is to that when I get there.
I'm jealous actually that with so I'm based out of this office is in Team Valley in Gateshead.
Yeah.
Northeast, born and bred. Not born and bred, but this is where I live.
Yeah,
and I haven't been to London for probably 3 years now, and it's just, there's been a few people that have kind of, I miss it. Just going to the stuff that you have in London that you just don't have in Newcastle or Teesside or whichever, which is.
No, totally. I'm the same. I would never live in London. Although please don't hold me to that in case in 10 years' time someone finds me living here. But I in theory, I'll never live in London because I absolutely love the Northeast, and I've lived there since I was about 10 years old in Morpeth, and then worked my way south. So Newcastle University, Durham, lived there for a while, Hartlepool now, so I'll probably end up retiring somewhere like York or something like that. But I don't want to leave the Northeast, but there is definitely something that I miss about not being in London more regularly, and so it's nice to be back for sure.
No, that's cool. So normally what I do is kind of start with some of the backstory, what you were like at school and that kind of thing. But I think actually, because I'm really interested, can you tell us a bit about Everflow, both Everflow Tech and Everflow Water to start with? And then I'm going to go backwards. Is that cool? It'll help set the scene for the whole thing.
No, totally. It's absolutely fine. So I guess like as a company, we exist to make utilities simple for businesses. I mean, that's what we set out to do. And I'd like to think that is something that we have been achieving so far. And there are three main ways that we do that. Firstly, we try and make it as easy for participants in the market to sell and contract with businesses. So that means kind of making tools that enable quoting online, quoting for brokers, those sorts of things, so that kind of businesses can find suppliers as easy as possible. Secondly, as a supplier, we make it as easy for customers to receive the services that they need as possible. So whether that's kind of answering the phone call within seconds rather than leaving people waiting for half an hour, or whether that's providing digital services, that's what we do. And then thirdly, we try and make it as simple as possible for other suppliers to operate efficiently in the market. It's why we set up our tech business, was to sell our technology that we developed to some of our competitors, because On the one hand, people always ask me, well, why are you selling kind of the thing that's making you successful to your competitors? And my answer is simple. It's because my mission is to make utilities simple, and if I can provide something to the competition to enable them on that journey and ultimately benefit the businesses they're serving, then that to me matters more than kind of maximizing our profit at every opportunity.
It's incredible, isn't it? And I think this could be an engineer thing, but as soon as you have a mission which you actually believe in, the whole point of our business strategy, it guides every decision. So when you're like, do we do it? Do we not do it? And it's like, look, if that's our mission, even though to some people it might seem counterintuitive, it's what we should do. And it makes makes perfect sense. And one of the things that I'm also interested to pick your brains on as well is that with I've been trying to spend more time with people that are different to me, if that makes sense. Yeah. And what's been really funny is that I've always been trained to think in a certain way. So for instance, even this office I'm in now, I constantly iterate, how can I make things faster, smoother, closer? Yeah. Like that's just what I do all day, every day. And there's people that are the complete opposite to that. And it's funny that when they point stuff out about me that I hadn't even realized, it's like, oh my God. And it's funny because it's been a while, although I work with different engineers, I think it's like a mindset. It's born in us. It's quite cool. Yeah. So you said, were you born in Morpeth?
So I wasn't born in Morpeth, I was born in Lancaster. But
whereabouts in Lancaster?
I was born actually in Lancaster, so in the city of, and then I think we lived about half an hour away from Lancaster, but then we moved up to the northeast when I was
half an hour north, half an hour south.
Yeah, mostly north. So do you know Kirkby Lonsdale at all?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I know very well.
Yeah. So we lived there. Kind of, it's right. In fact, a little bit of the towns in Lancashire, a little bit of the towns in Cumbria. So I lived there for 10 years. Then my dad got a job in the northeast, so we all moved up to Morpeth, and I lived there for kind of the next 8 years of my life. And I really like Morpeth, and I really like going back. But yeah, it's like I say, I couldn't move out of the northeast now. It's definitely in my blood.
The reason I wanted to ask is because I basically grew up 30 minutes-ish south of Lancaster.
Oh, okay.
And on a previous podcast, there was a guy called Chris that runs a tech company called Meow, and he literally grew up on the street behind me.
Yeah.
And it was just surreal. And we went through that thing of, oh, where'd you grow up? And he was like, Liverpool. Yeah. I was like, okay, but whereabouts? And honestly, the more I kind of asked that question, it's like asking 5 whys. It was literally 100 meters from my house, and it was just mind-blowing. And that's why I didn't know which way you were going to go.
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine if there's like 3 of us just like right next to
stranger things have happened. Because the other thing that I've kind of found, but I think it's not a genuine coincidence, the amount of people I speak to or interview, they had similar backgrounds and upbringings and values and stuff. That it was like, wow, it must be chance. It's like, no, because it's got to pick the guests. But you know what I mean? And then, so what were you like at school?
Well, I think probably annoying would probably be an appropriate word. I think teachers found me super annoying because I was like that. I was that typical underachiever who just didn't kind of bother putting any work into school. I was there for the social aspects, not for the qualifications. And I think like my philosophy, which is interesting, I'll come up to talk about how this impacts business, but philosophy was kind of what is the minimum work that I can put in to school to get the thing that I needed. Yeah. So like whether that's kind of GCSEs, right? Okay, what are GCSEs for? Now, any kids listening to this, don't necessarily follow this advice, but what GCSEs, what do I need? Well, I need five, don't I, to get into A-levels? Okay, well, I'm not going to bother putting any work in as long as I know I'm going to get 5. Okay, A-levels, what are they for? Well, they're to get you into university, aren't they? So I know what grades I need, so I'll just work towards those. In fact, I think one of my physics teacher when I was there, I was on track to get an A, and kind of we went to parents' evening with my parents, and I sat there with my physics teacher, and she was saying like, look, this is really frustrating. You're not trying to kind of put the effort in to do the work, and I was just sat there, and I was like, well, do you realize that all I need to do to get an A overall is get an E in my next exam? And she was like, well, I'm not sure that's right. So she called over kind of the head of physics, and he was like, no, I think he's actually right. Like, and then still get an A overall. So I did that. But that's kind of probably the philosophy that I took through. Like I say, was what is the simplest thing that I need to do to get the output that I need to kind of get to the next step, I suppose. And it's interesting because I think like that I still take that principle but in business, but what I've learned is what you do is by kind of going along the simplest thing that you can do to get the required output, what that does is it allows you to kind of have a much greater bandwidth for actually doing stuff. Because rather than trying to seek perfection,
is that is now what you class as like the commercial approach as a business person. That's exactly what we should do, or an engineer. It's how do you get the best result or anything you can for the least amount of effort or resource or utility. That it is what it is. So I think it's almost, you probably just showed the traits earlier in life, but it takes balls to actually kind of say to someone, yeah, I'm going to do the minimum effort to get the result back.
Yeah, I guess I was a bit. I must have had a self-assured streak from quite a young age, I think.
But but it's still fascinating. So then you went to Newcastle Uni, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I started kind of migrating further south. So went to Newcastle Uni, did a degree in chemical engineering, and I think the funny thing was I think kind of during that process I probably realized that I didn't really want to be an engineer.
Wow. Okay.
I think the three things that I did figure out whilst I was at university, I think number one, I figured out that hard work is actually necessary, because whilst I could apply that sort of less hardworking approach to school, when it got to university, that was a very different matter. And there was a bit of a wake up call that actually, hang on, wait a second, yeah, I can't just breeze through life. So hard work was necessary is the first thing I learned at university. The second thing was probably not to do with the university so much, but I realised I was good at making money. So just to give you one example, I got my student loan. What do you do with your student loan? Well, I think students either do one of two things: either spend it all on drink, or they actually are sensible with their student loan and kind of use it for what it's meant for living costs, all that sort of stuff. Well, I took the third option of,
you didn't
well,
go to a casino, did you?
No, I didn't get to the casino.
I know people that did, and I was expecting for that story of, I went to the casino on day one and blew $4,500 on.
Put it all on black. Yeah, no, I took the secret fourth option then, which was I noticed that I don't know if you came across them or if you did remember, but Sony produced this handheld gaming console called the PSP, which was coming out kind of around the same time that I went to university, and they were like gold dust. You couldn't get them anywhere, but I saw that Virgin when that was a store. They'd managed to get kind of like, I think it was 20 in stock or something like that. So I took all of my student loan and bought all of those because I knew I could sell them, and the risk was so small because if I couldn't sell them, I'd just take them back and get a refund. So but I was just up to stuff like that because I just thought, well, I've got this kind of money at a very low interest rate. Why not make more money than I'm paying in interest on this loan? So that was the second thing I discovered, and then the third thing, actually, which is quite personal to me, was that my faith was really important to me. So I'm a Christian. I go to church, but kind of before I got to university, that wasn't like my parents had taken me to church all my life, but I'd never had a personal faith, and that was a thing that kind of came to fruition during university, and that's kind of impacted me a lot. Kind of, I think both. On a personal level, obviously, but in the way that I do business and the way that I want to do business, it's really important and kind of grounded a lot of our values.
But what's quite funny, and you're not a PS5 scalper, are you? When you knew that PS5s were coming out, and
no, I don't have the time to do that.
But similar kind of thing. But it was more acceptable back in the day. But it's I get it. What I was going to say is that the fact of what you said before about how you got your black tie born, you like to wear your hoodie, and even Charlotte mentioned that you sometimes like to rebel sometimes with different things. Prime example, that it's likewise. It's funny that the different streaks, and it's just that you often see that in entrepreneurs. It's almost the existing systems and stuff. So actually, how and why did you end up doing chemical and process engineering? Because that's quite it's a nerd's degree in a positive way.
It is. So I mean, honestly, it was like, uh, okay, I'm good at maths, I'm good at physics, I'm good at chemistry. What one of these things should I do? And I plumped for that one. I think, like, in hindsight, I probably would have preferred to have done straight maths or something like that. But you know, it is what it is, and I think, like with many things, I don't really regret it
Hmm.
because there's a lot of good stuff and a lot of stuff that I learned from it. Um, but yeah, it just wasn't kind of. It wasn't for me. I'm really not a details person, and I think, kind of, particularly when you're starting out as an engineer,
Hmm.
like, you just have to be super detailed.
I agree with you, and it's because actually I was talking to my cousin's son, so my second cousin goes to uni as
Mm,
an engineer in October, and I've kind of said to him, it's 50% work and 50% fun. Don't forget the fun bit. But
yeah.
he wants to do like chemical processing, maybe a bit of nuclear, but it's that kind of,
Okay.
but I think university is a fascinating kind of process. And then how did you get into work? Because you almost went into the process industry or the water industry from the
Yeah, I
start.
did, yeah. So I think one of the things that was, like, important to me, and it still is important to me, was kind of making sure that I've got a good set of contacts, like people I know, because you're always going to need to rely on other people's advice or kind of learn from their wisdom, and that's just something that I've always known and always sought. And so I'd actually done kind of a bit of work with a company. I think it was during the summer vacation from kind of after my
Hmm.
second year,
Hmm.
and I worked for this guy Tel, who's got an engineering cost consultancy called Aqua Consultants, based down in Bradford. And I did some work for him. And then, just when I was coming towards the end of uni, I just picked up the phone and was like, I'd love to come and work for you. Have you got any jobs? And he was like, actually, do you know what? I might have something. So I met up with him for coffee, and he was like, "How much do you want to be paid?" And then I was like, "Oh man, I wasn't expecting this." So I pitched it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that seems fine." And I was like, "Oh, flipping heck, I've gone in too low." But you know what? It was a great, like, that time at Aqua Consultants was so good because Tel's an entrepreneur. He set up numerous businesses, and I learned a lot from him about kind of what it means to set up a business, what it means to run a business. Because within about 2 years, I think it was, he put me in charge of kind of the northeast division
Wow.
of their organization, and I managed to kind of double the turnover of that business, and I just learned so much from Tel. Yeah, so that's
Well,
but I,
what's interesting though is just with so I ironically also started my career in the water industry. So I was
okay.
working for Kia Construction,
Hmm.
and in the northwest they had something which, well, it was called KMI Water, then it was called KMI Plus, but
Yeah.
it was Rivington Wastewater Treatment Works, which is
Right.
nearer to where I kind of grew up. And it was just, for me, it was learning project management and managing
Mm.
subcontractors. And my mentor was the project manager on site, a guy called Paul Martin. And one of the things that he told me, which I still do today, was I have a little workbook. And it's the fact that I keep track of stuff. But what I'm really
Mhm.
fascinated by your kind of story is the fact that almost from the start, it sounds like you wanted to go the business route and you viewed it as a
Yeah.
business, as opposed to, if I'm honest, I viewed it as a job to do the best job to climb the standard ranks. And I didn't really twig on the business side of things until much later on. So it sounds like that was always kind of part of your journey.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of do you know what, that is a good, really good point, and it's probably worth discussing that, because I think a lot of people, when they leave university, they've kind of maybe done quite a vocational degree, like an engineering degree or something like that, and or an accountancy degree, and they think kind of their role is just to get better and better at and have more and more knowledge on their subject. And actually, it's probably something that is useful to kind of, for anyone that's listening to this, is if you're kind of thinking like that, maybe change your thinking to go, yeah, that is important, that's right. But if you're wanting to kind of get into business leadership,
Hmm.
or if you're wanting to kind of lead an accountancy firm, or lead practice, or lead kind of engineering, actually, it's two of the things that are most important alongside your knowledge are kind of really good sound commercial understanding. So kind of what are the drivers that make a business function, what are the drivers that make kind of a business grow, but also kind of making sure that you're really investing in yourself in terms of your people skills,
Mm-hmm.
how you relate to people, how you influence. Those are two of the things that are so important if you're wanting to kind of go in a direction that is not just a specialist in your field.
But because the thing that I always find quite funny is that when you're at uni or even when you're in education, it's always about get the best grades you can. And in theory, someone who gets a first is better than someone who gets a 2-1, who's better than someone who gets a 2-2, on paper.
Yeah.
But the truth is, as soon as you kind of get your job, you need to be good enough that you understand stuff. But actually, I much prefer to have someone that has a 2-1 but has some good banter about them, that they can talk to people and bounce ideas off them and bring people together and you find gaps and stuff. But you don't get taught that. The point is, I completely agree with you, is that often it's if you've got a bit of nous about you, it makes such a huge, massive difference.
Yeah,
if you also have the technical stuff.
I think it's weird. It's weird actually that isn't a thing that just gets like people get told about really.
But things, how do you teach someone to have fun and bring people to, I don't think it's something you can. So for instance, for me personally, it was that when I was always involved with a lot of the sports teams. So for instance, I was captain of the basketball team. I was social sec for a long time. When you're like, I was in Cubs and Scouts growing up. And when we used to do scout camps and games and whatever, you're always kind of bringing people together and having fun and getting them excited and stuff. That not everyone can do that. And again, a lot of engineers are quite nerdy, that they don't have the patter to kind of do that.
I mean, that's definitely true, that there's kind of a lot to do with nature, but I think like there's a lot of things that can be taught. I mean, one of the things that I like to be able to do is to provide kind of coaching to kind of some of our senior leaders to try and help them just develop, because even people who are naturally quite good at it, you still need to kind of give them pointers, right? Because no one stops learning. So but I think it's you're right. There is a lot to do with nature. I think there's a lot to do with nurture. But I guess the point is, if people aren't telling people from a young age, actually these are just really important skills that you will need if you're wanting to do this, then people kind of just walk blindly into kind of a career where they're not prepared for kind of that. And so I think those conversations just need to be being had at education levels.
That's cool. So you were working for this guy. What's your kind of journey from there up until before you started to do your own thing? I guess the next few years.
Yeah, so I knew kind of whilst I was working for Tel that I really wanted to set up my own business, and I'd approached Tel and said, look, this is what I really want to do in the future. We didn't quite have an idea about what that would look like at this point, but I think we both had an understanding that this is probably where things would lead. So I said to Tel, look, I'll go and get a job in kind of a different environment in a bigger company, corporate company, just to get a bit of varied experience. I'll come back to you with an idea, and we'll hopefully go from there. So that's what I did. So I left Aqua Consultants, joined Northumbrian Water, started to grow some of their commercial businesses, and then spotted this opportunity which I wasn't aware about before, of the kind of deregulation of the water retail market. And so I ended up kind of positioning myself within Northumbrian Water to work in that area and lead on some of that activity. And so I set up Northumbrian Water's first retailer, which was NWG Business. They've now since merged with Anglian Water's equivalent, and they've got a company called Wave. But I set up NWG Business and put forward kind of what I thought the growth strategy should be. I think the Northumbrian Water didn't want to be quite as aggressive as I did in the market, and so I thought, well, do you know what? This is probably the idea that I've been looking for. Wow. So went and asked Tel and another guy that I know who's our CEO, Adam, and said, look, we've got this idea, just need kind of £500,000. Are you happy to kind of just let me have the money? And fortunately they're like, yeah, sure, let's go for it. There's a good opportunity here. There's people doing things really badly. We should be able to kind of make some good inroads into this market.
Wow.
So quite funny because what I presented to them was I think it was a business plan with growth trajectories of, I'm going to be really ambitious. We're going to get to £8 million turnover after 5 years. It's going to be super exciting. And then obviously my supposedly ambitious growth was just so under optimistic, and incredibly pessimistic, that because we comfortably outstripped that. I mean, we after 5 years, I think we hit like 60 million turnover. We're on course this year for 100 million turnover, and what I'm describing at the moment is just kind of what I'm calling our second phase of growth, because we're actually just about to start what I'd call our third phase of growth, where we're hoping to accelerate even harder. So that is something that I've definitely learned over the past few years: is if you set your sights low, you might exceed them, but you should probably be setting your sights a lot higher, because you probably can achieve it if you've got the right people, if you've got the right cash to back you, if you've got the right strategy, and then ultimately the right execution to deliver your strategy, then you should be able to kind of massively exceed what you even think is possible.
Wow. So your business, is it still the three of you, or did you bring in external investment?
So we bought Tell out, I think it was about 2.5-3 years ago, maybe. Okay. Something like that, maybe a bit before that, actually.
Because it's still super cool that the guy that you started your kind of career with was both willing to back you, but still part of this journey as well.
Oh no, totally. Got so much respect for Tell, and keep in touch regularly. He's just he was such a good guy. I think one of the things actually I need to do is introduce him to. We said we need to meet up because since having Jemima about 4 months ago, our first child, it'd be good to actually introduce her to him, and him to her, etc., because he's definitely kind of been a big part of my family's life, and so we like to keep in touch.
So can you almost describe the business now, because it sounds like you've been on a hell of a journey, and likewise on your LinkedIn header you've won various awards as well. Was it you're in the top 1,000 fastest growing companies in Europe by the FT, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we finished third last year in the fastest growing companies in Europe.
Wow.
This year we're 54th, and we're still the third highest place growing company from who was also in it last year. So kind of the other 51 companies in the top 54 are new companies to the metric. So we're maintaining a fast pace of growth, but like I say, this is we're about to start an even faster pace of growth. But I think it's just a really exciting place to be, because we're constantly recruiting. I think our number one challenge at the moment is just getting kind of enough people, enough of the right people into the business to keep it growing. But it's a good problem to have. And we've learned so many lessons, I think, over the past 3 years, which there's some of the kind of common lessons that you hear people talk about, but they're like, if I was kind of sat here three years ago, it'd be like, okay, yeah, no, people always tell me these things. I'm sure they are important, but maybe they're not as important as people think. But I want to tell people who are listening to this podcast, these things are really, really critical. If you can focus on nothing else in your business, you need to do these things. So firstly, I think that you need, as a business, you have to focus on cash. Like just if you can focus on one thing, first of all, focus absolutely on cash until your business is cash generative. Doesn't necessarily matter that it's profitable or not, as long as you have a route to profitability. So make sure you get to cash positivity first, and then make sure that you've also got a route to profitability, even if you aren't profitable. Because if you cash will kill your business, even if it's not, even if it doesn't mean kind of your business folds. If you don't have the cash to invest in its growth, then you're just not going to get to where you need to be. So and that is so important. So I cannot stress that enough. Secondly, now this one again, it's just something that you hear all the time, but then you kind of hear and go, yeah, sure, I'm sure that's right, but I'm going to carry on doing whatever I'm doing. So secondly, with respect to people, hire the best people that you can afford every time. And note, I say the best, not the most expensive, because there's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to, as a business leader, define what you need in the next few years of your growth from that role, and then find the person who is best at doing that role that you can afford. So that doesn't mean kind of, for instance, if you've got ambitions to kind of get to a workforce of 100 people, for instance, the best person for you over the next 3 years is probably not someone who's capable of managing 10,000 people, even if they are the most expensive person. So that's just an example. But I think that is so important. I cannot stress that enough. Hire the best people that you can afford, the best people, not the most expensive. So that's number 2. And then I think the third one is, again, something you hear all the time, but people go, yes, I understand that, but don't necessarily put it into practice. And that is, be very, very transparent in your dealings with people, and always stick to your values, no matter the cost. And there are so many times in business that you'll come across like an opportunity or a decision that needs to be made, and it's like, oh, but doesn't quite fit with kind of our values or how we do business. But we could probably just about shoehorn the decision or justify the decision on this basis. Don't do that. If you're even asking that question, can we shoehorn it in, or can we kind of just get around our values? Just don't do it. You've answered your question already, because the problem is, once you lose who you are as a business, you will lose your direction. It doesn't matter what you think you might be able to kind of flex or get away with. It's not true. If you compromise who you are, you will lose your direction. And so how this plays out in business, so this plays out, I think, in particular with people. So as well as business decisions. So, for instance, this means kind of letting go of your really high performers if they are operating in a way that is out of kilter with your values. So even if they're kind of bringing in loads of sales, if they're doing it in a way that is not in keeping with your values, just let them go. Mm-hmm. I can, from experience, I can promise you that this is true, that even someone you think is indispensable because of what they're bringing, by simply kind of letting them go and kind of letting others around them flourish instead of being suppressed by kind of their behavior, you will see much more growth than you thought you would have lost. So just you have to stick to your values in your decision making. And I think the other thing to remember just on that is, I think it's okay to acknowledge that not everyone that you bring into your business is going to go on the full journey with you, because mm-hmm. people are on their own journeys, and some people may not want to go kind of where the business is going. Some people may not be able to go where the business is going. And I think that's okay, but you just have to be transparent with people about where you are as a business and where they are as a person, and make sure you're dealing with that situation fairly. But you have to acknowledge that situation exists. I mean, just to give an example, it would be like, trying to climb Mount Everest with someone who's kind of got really bad asthma or something like that, and you might be able to get them up a certain distance, but come on, let's be real about this situation. You're not going to be able to get to the top with that person. It's not going to be fair on them, and it's not going to be fair on the rest of the party kind of trying to get there. And so that's just life. That's you have to kind of acknowledge those situations and just move past them, but deal with people fairly. Sorry, that was an incredibly long-winded answer to your question. But hopefully there's some kind of nuggets of some wisdom that of things that I've learned along this journey so far.
It feels like that was quite therapeutic for you.
It was, yeah. No, it's good. It's good to talk about these things. And like I said at the beginning, actually, anyone who's listening, please act on those 3 things, because they will benefit your business so much more than most of the decisions that you can make.
How long has the business been going now?
So we've been going for about 6.5 years now.
Wow.
So I think most of the growth has happened both in terms of people and revenue, etc., in the last 4 years. Something like that. Do you
mind if I ask you about that? Just because I know a lot of people will be really interested in it, because that's almost especially in like the startup community, so many people fail that actually it's quite nice to. And then likewise, so many people start, but actually it might not be until year 2, 3 that they start to actually get traction.
Yeah.
So actually, if they hear from people that have blatantly made it and done really well, and it took them until year 2 to 3 before it really started to take off. If they're currently at year 1.5,
Mm.
they don't give up because actually, it's like, what was your growth in terms of revenue and people like over those 6.5 years? Just because I think it'll really add value to
Yeah,
people.
no, totally. So I think like the first 2.5 years, we went from kind of me in a cafe to about 6 people, and in a little office, all sharing pizzas, all that sort of thing, and kind of in terms of revenue growth, that's probably about 0 to 2 million, something around there. And then it was kind of really at that point where we're like, okay, either we just continue growing like this, and that might be fine, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's like, some people just kind of want to go at a
Mm-hmm.
steady pace, keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses like that, and they're the backbone of the UK economy. There's nothing wrong with that, but you do have to make an active decision. Either you are going to do that, or you want to actually grow, and you want to grow at a much faster pace. And so the moment that you say, right, actually, do you know what, we're wanting to go faster than this, you have to make sure you've got the right plans. You've got to make sure you've got the right investment, in order to kind of facilitate that growth. Otherwise, you're gonna stall. In fact, I think I talked about it earlier, but the four key things in any for any business to think about are kind of the people, the cash, the strategy. So that's kind of how are you going to attack the market that you're in, and then the execution, how are you actually going to follow that through and deliver. Those are the four key areas of business that you need to really think about when you're starting to go, right, we're wanting to scale.
No, I love it. And then at what point did you bring in external investment? Because again, a really hot topic, because
Yeah.
people, do they do it? Do they not do it? How much? And it's that balance again, as someone that's been and done it. Have you got
Yeah.
any advice to give on kind of raising investment?
I think this is a really tricky one, and because it's very difficult to answer this question without kind of knowing the specifics of someone's business, because I mean there's three main forms of getting money, and kind of either you kind of raise debt, or you raise capital through either private equity or venture capital. I think which one of those routes you go down, it has to depend on your business. Like if you're um, and it depends on kind of how quickly you're wanting to grow. If you're pre-profit and you want to grow really really quickly, as long as you have a big total addressable market, and I'm talking kind of probably billion pound plus total addressable market that you could in theory contract with or sell to, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that your business does, then VC is probably the best way to go. If you're you're a profitable business, you're generating some cash, and actually what you want to do is scale out what you do. So you're not really kind of wanting to do much other than get better and better and better at what you do. Maybe kind of take some acquisitions, maybe grow through that way. Then PE is probably the route for you. If you're super high profit, and kind of you think that you can get down kind of the growth journey that you want with debt, that's also fine. It means you keep your equity, but it does mean kind of that you're giving away some of your kind of your earnings on an ongoing basis. So like it's really difficult to say without kind of having specific business in front of you, kind of what would be the recommended route. But I think kind of broadly speaking, that would be my advice. And the route that we went down at the time, is we took on debt. I think it's partly because we wanted to retain a lot of the control of the business, and for the amount of capital that we needed to raise, we probably wouldn't have been able to kind of do that without going down the debt route. I think that now we'll be going through another raise at some point over this next 12 months. I think we'll be looking at debt, but for working capital reasons, but we won't be looking at debt for growth reasons.
Wow.
This next time, because I think, like I say, we're wanting to go on a much faster pace of growth than we already are, and so we're going to look at the options there.
Yeah, that's cool. But you know what? Like I do a lot of stuff in the startup community, and I hear a lot of speakers on different things. I think that's the best anyone's described it, and that includes the finance people themselves. So I appreciate it. I think it's cool. But I think it's the honest truth that I think people genuinely value, as opposed, because again, VCs and whoever will always sell a dream. Actually, for someone that's been through it, it's nice to hear.
Yeah, I should say, like, I mean, it's fairly obvious, but I think the really important things from both a VC and a PE perspective is you really need to make sure that the people that you're getting money from share the same values as you.
Yeah.
I talked about values already, but it is really important, because if you've not got the right values from both your internal team but also your external partners, then you're gonna clash heads at some point, and you want people who are supportive of the mission, of the journey, rather than people who are kind of trying to just kind of line their own pockets as much as possible.
No, it's class. Honestly, really brilliant advice, which is cool. Do you enjoy it?
I love it. Yeah, I think if I've always said if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be doing it. Like I would exit the business, but I've got no plans to exit the business, and I just really do enjoy what I'm doing. I think there's you probably don't get so many chances in life to grow a kind of really fast paced business, and so I'm going to take it with both hands and see where we can get to. We've got some massive targets, so we'll see where we get to against those.
Can I ask you about the dream? What is the goal? What, in 5 years, 10 years, what is dream scenario A?
Our super long term goal, our BHAG, I suppose, big hairy audacious goal, as people like to call it, is to provide 5 million business services, either via our own retailer operations or through other suppliers that are using our platform. And obviously anyone sat there kind of with a calculator will be able to tell you straight away that even if we were to sell kind of so we're doing water at the moment, we're moving into waste, so bin collection this year, telecoms the year after, energy the year after. Even if we were to kind of do all of those, there wouldn't be enough businesses in SME businesses in the UK to kind of support that 5 million number. And so therefore, kind of obviously we're going to have to go overseas. We're going to have to go into kind of European competitive markets, American competitive markets. And so I would love it if we could make kind of 5 million business services simpler to engage with from business perspective, because what we would love to see businesses, suppliers, brokers in the markets spending much more of their time on than kind of arranging contracts or things like that, or answering billing queries, or all of the things that should just be automated. We would love it if every one of those businesses that were impacted by us was able to spend much more time on figuring out how to reduce their utility consumption, because that's far more valuable both to them as businesses, but also the planet, more importantly. And I think like that's one of the things that we're really pushing, and it's just so important to push both with our customers, both in the markets that we're operating, because I mean, it's just obvious we have to, as a globe, tidy up what we're doing, and if we can impact the utility market to help that, then great. I mean, you may have seen recently that we're the first UK water company to be carbon neutral. That was just so important to us. It was just like, well, why aren't other people doing it? We need to do that. That's only the first step, of course, because the actual work to then kind of drive down that greenhouse gas emissions needs to take place as well, which we've got plans to do. So, but yeah, that's the dream for the future. So serving kind of 5 million business services across the globe through either as a retailer or a platform, helping businesses to focus more on reducing their utility wastage. Those are what we want to do.
Cool. It's great to just speak to someone who has such ambitions, because again, like, not everyone does, and there's nothing wrong with whether people do or don't, but still it's nice to hear. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool. It's funny because you've kind of covered most of the stuff I was going to ask, and it's almost I'm still going to ask some of the other questions because it's part of the structure and it goes onto YouTube and it gets clipped up. But it's really fascinating, and I can see why, you're winning, hopefully winning awards, hopefully another one tonight. It's what also comes across. It's the passion. It's the fact that you really blatantly just love this.
Yeah, and I guess it's not just me. I think that's the really nice thing about coming into work, is that every person that kind of is in the business is really passionate about like making life simple for customers as well, and that to me is just makes it where people kind of talk about, oh, it's not really work. Well, that is kind of how it feels for me, because I'm joined by kind of a community of people who are equally as passionate about kind of making a real difference.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you, and this might just be me, But for me, I see business like a game, and especially as an engineer, you can get very good at looking at your tokens, your utility, your stuff
Yeah.
that you can deploy in different ways to kind of see what happens. I don't know,
Yeah.
what is your approach to that? It's like, how do you view kind of business? Do you do it in a playful way, or do you take it super seriously?
Totally as a game, like just as you described. It's because the things that aren't, I don't really care so much for profit, for money. Like that's not anywhere near the top of my agenda when it comes to business. The whole thing is about the fun. Like how can we do this in a way that other people aren't doing
Yeah.
it? How can we kind of beat the competition? How can we kind of get these metrics to this level? How can we make things easier for customers? Like those are the things that interest me. All of the challenges and the kind of obstacles and all of those things. That is far more fun than kind of, right, we've now got to kind of £10 million EBITDA. It's just that
But
doesn't particularly interest me that much.
but on that topic though, like at a certain point, and you see a lot in sports people, if you aim towards a figure 10 million EBITDA, when you hit it, it's like, well, what next? What, 12, 50?
Yeah,
As we're actually, if you've got this goal that almost you can never reach,
yeah,
it's I think it's a good thing to have, because in theory it just gives you that drive to just keep wanting to
yeah,
beat everyone
totally.
else.
I think this it's interesting you say that, because I think what I've realized as a CEO, and this is probably, but most people probably don't experience this because they're not CEOs, and they're probably not CEOs of rapidly scaling companies. But your job is like my job is constantly evolving. I have to kind of figure out, okay, what do I do now? Because the thing that I encourage all of my leaders to do is their jobs are to make themselves redundant as quickly as possible, because that is how we scale. Like if they're kind of not doing that, then they become a bottleneck. And so that, first and foremost, that is my job. So I'm always thinking, okay, what am I doing now? So what do I need to give to like someone else to do? And like, who do I need to hire to kind of then take that thing on that I'm doing? Kind of, I'm probably doing fine, but there's definitely people who are more experienced at doing that thing, whatever that thing is, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing. So to get that person on board, they can do it much better than I can. Okay, now what am I doing with my time? Oh, I've got nothing to do. So now I need to figure out what I've got to do. Then you figure out what you've got to do, and then you start going down that journey, and then you go, right, okay, now I need to employ someone to do that thing. And then that is just the life of a CEO, I think, in a scaling organization, is that constant cycle of, right, passing something over to someone else to do who's much better at it, figuring out what you do next. Once you figured that out, passing that on to someone else, and then you just keep on doing that over and over again.
I love it. But again, that comes back to, that's an engineering trait. It's just, you're solving the problem as quick. You're doing exactly what you did at GCSEs and A levels
Yeah,
to figure out, how do I get there as quick as possible with the least amount of effort? And as soon as you've done it, what's the next one? So I love
yeah,
it. I think it's class. At the end of every interview, I tend to kind of clip this all up, and I has its own kind of section. And I love this bit as well, but I think you might have kind of already answered it. What's the best piece of advice you've ever had?
yeah. So this is interesting. So there's lots of advice that I give to people, but I think the best piece of advice that I've received is from a guy called John Elliott,
Mm-hmm.
who do you know him from
Ebac.
eBay?
Yep.
Just incredible guy. Donated his company to his employees, and that actually was the thing that prompted me to contact him. So I saw that article in the news. I think it was the BBC, and I just reached out to him on LinkedIn. Said, really inspired me. This was just when I was starting Everflow, kind of back six years ago. I said, I'm just starting out my own business. I'd love to meet up, chat, grab a coffee with you. And he was kind enough to say, oh yeah, I'd love to. So I had a coffee just kind of next to his factory.
Was that in the
Me
fake Costa coffee, by the way?
Sorry?
Was that in Siesta Coffee, which is on Newton Aycliffe?
It is, yeah.
The fake Costa coffee.
Yeah.
Because I used to work at Techmore, which is next to the Ebac factory.
Okay.
And just for people that haven't got a clue what we're talking about, in a business park, which is just off the A1, which I used to work, which is next to this guy's factory, there's a company called Siesta, and they've 100% or 99% ripped off Costa Coffee.
Yeah.
The color, the branding, the menus, they're everything, but they've called it something else. So it's the fake Costa Coffee, and people talk about it all over the place. So I had to ask.
It's good coffee though, so can't knock it. But yeah, so I had a coffee with him there, and then he took me for a tour of his factory, and kind of I asked him, what advice would you give me starting out? And first thing he said was, you really don't strike me as like as kind of the leader of a business. And I think that's probably still true. I think to most people, I'm still kind of the rebel that, like, how on earth is he in charge of that company? But the advice that he gave me was very simple. He said, do not be flexible with your customers. So in essence, what he was saying was, figure out who your customers are, figure out what you're selling to them, and be happy. You're going to have to turn away some customers because they're not going to fit your mold, but that's fine because you can't be everything to everyone. And he was dead right, because I think the approach that I'd taken at the start of the business was, we were trying to be everything to everyone and try and offer every water to everyone in the market, whether they were Tesco or whether they were kind of a corner shop. And the fact that kind of those two different customers were they had very different needs. If we continued down that route, we'd have ended up with kind of 100 different processes for different customers, and that just doesn't work in business. And so you have to just be willing to go, well, they're not my customer, and that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
So
Who kind of is your target customer? What would you classify?
So our target customer for retail is SME businesses. So we'll work with anyone kind of that's using kind of anywhere from £100 a year on water all the way through to about £1 million on water, and that's our sweet spot. Anything above that, and we kind of just politely say no, as much as they might like to work with us. We've had a few of those where it's again this comes back to your values and decision making. We've had kind of a few that have come to us, and then we've ummed and ahed and gone, actually, guys, you have to be pretty disciplined on that.
No, honestly, I love it. And again, I've done about 90 of these now, and nobody said that before, so that's quite cool. And that's the reason I love this. And hopefully, when it gets clipped up, it's value that you can give to people. That I think is quite cool as well. If you were to give advice to your younger self, and you can pick, I don't know, you at school, GCSEs, you 6 years ago, what would it be?
I've had a think about this before, and honestly, I don't think I would. And I think for the same way that I like the game of kind of running the business, life to me is a journey of discovery. There's failures and successes, and each one of those things, whether it's a failure or a success, teaches you something. And to be honest, that is, to me, is much more impactful than kind of being told something. So, even if I gave myself some advice, I probably wouldn't have listened to it because I'm naturally a rebel. But there's nothing kind of along the journey where I've gone, do you know what? There are things that you go, oh, well, if I'd done that sooner, then that would have been better. But like, I am where I am, and I don't think I'd have the same kind of wisdom to pass on to people or things like that if I haven't kind of experienced some of those challenges firsthand.
But the other side to it is the one you said before about how maybe your personality, where you are quite eccentric and rebellious, and whatever, you kind of need those people. You're never going to get to $1 billion in revenue if you play it safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So totally. It's just I get it. I like it, and I think investors will like it as well, because you want to aim high, and it's just you need to be a little bit crazy to do stuff that other people think, wow. But I still stand by the fact that I think your background in engineering and the way that you think and stuff will help you get there in a way that not everyone has. So I think it's almost a perfect mix of stuff. Is there anything you would like to talk about, Unplugged, before we go?
No, I'm good. I'll leave this segment completely free. I've talked enough, and I'm sure kind of people can check us out if they want to kind of switch their water.
Cool. Well, honestly, genuinely, I'm really delighted that we got to speak. Best of luck for your awards tonight.
Thank you very much.
I will keep an eye out on your socials and press releases and stuff, and chances are, obviously, I'll post the clips bit after you'll know, so I'll add it into that. But it's fantastic just to hear a Northeast business that's doing like really, really good things, like on a Europe-wide scale. As you said yourself, that it's great to see, and fingers crossed, big great things kind of for the future. And thank you for your time, and please stay in touch.
No, it's been wonderful to chat.
No, cool. Well, enjoy your events due tonight, and please stay in touch.
Great. Cheers,
cool.
Steve.
No worries. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye.